Hello, good morning. How the devil are you? Well, welcome to a very early and quite chilly mid-May morning here in beautiful Nova Scotia. The sun is rising just over my left shoulder. It's about 6:15. I was away on business last week in Germany, and I think the jet lag has made me a bit off, because for the last two mornings I've woke up about 4:30 and then sort of given up the ghost and just got up about 5 o'clock. So it's nice and early, and I'm out there. I like to get out early before work anyway. You know, you've got to use the time wisely instead of lazing around in bed, but not too early. Anyway, I tell you, it's amazing how much noise travels, you know, in the night, in the early morning. I can't normally hear the road noise in the day, really, because the road's about a mile away, yet I can hear the lorries coming up and down really quite loudly. Anyway, enough of all that. We're talking about gardening, not road traffic. So I'm here today because my asparagus has come up. As you can see, absolutely beautiful. One of the great times of the gardening year, when you see the first little soldiers popping their heads up to attention, and you think, oh, it's asparagus season. For those of you who don't know, asparagus is a perennial, so it comes up every year. So that's why it's such a valuable plant to me in the garden. Number one, it's one of the first veg really that comes up at all, serious veg. It's perennial, so you know, once I've planted this in and let it bed down, I've got it for like 25-30 years. So that to me is a bargain, and they taste nice as well. You get a really good yield if you look after them. So like I said, you don't want to that's all right, it's only me, no need to bark. He never likes me. Anyway, right, so you get your asparagus, you plant them, the crowns in the ground, and then really you can't, or you don't want to pick them for the first at least 2 years. You may on the second year pick a few, but on the third year then you can start picking them for about a month, and then after, you know, 3 or 4 years you've got a good 6-week season out of them. And really they come out of the ground, and you want to let them get to a good, what should I say, about 6 to 9 inches. 9 inches is a bit is towards the end, I think, but about, you know, 6 to 9 inches. This is a good size. This may be just a touch small for me, but I'm going to use it anyway today. Let it get to that, and then what we do is we snap them off above the ground. You don't want to snap them off below the ground, just above the ground, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. And you want to keep picking them once, you know, after the 4 years for a good 6 weeks. You don't want to, and once that 6 weeks is over, you stop picking them, and then they grow up, and they you know, they get to a good 5 foot tall and big, beautiful, feathery fronds, and then they gather the strength up for the next year, and then at the end of the year, when the frosts come, they'll turn brown. You cut them down, and then wait for the next season. Couple of tips on when they do get big. The female plants will grow berries, and you want to cut them off really, unless you want to keep the seeds. As a rule, you want to cut the ones with the berries off, because then the plant will be using its goodness to go into the berries rather than, you know, the roots themselves, which is where the crowns, which is where we want the plant to be thinking about all the time, because that's where it can start throwing up these beautiful stems. So when you're growing your asparagus, you want to, as a rule, they're not good housemates. You don't really want to grow them with other things, although sometimes in the summer I do grow them. I put some lettuce maybe in there, or some basil, because basil is allegedly keeps away asparagus beetle, which is one of the pests. So I put some basil in there, or some lettuce and things, because the shade of the fronds from the asparagus provides a bit of shade for the lettuce, which I find, you know, stops them bolting in hot climate. Also, what was I going to say there? Yeah, the bit about the bedfellows bit. I'll show you next door in a minute, but I've got another bed of asparagus, and the asparagus isn't as chunky and big looking, and that's because I've had strawberries. I had strawberries in there when I first planted these asparagus, and I never had the heart to sort of get rid of the strawberries. Who doesn't love a strawberry? And they've obviously been competing in there with that asparagus, and that asparagus isn't as strong looking as this asparagus here. So I've finally bitten the bullet today and pulled all the strawberries out. But you can see that they're very thin, etc., which is not ideal. Okay, so we want to pick our asparagus ready to go. Oh yes, another thing here, I've got seaweed in here, and every year's a learning year when you're in the gardening, and I always use seaweed, but this year for some reason I didn't really scrunch up the seaweed or chop it up when I first put it in there, so it became very matted and really tangled and quite hard. So anything like my garlic and my onions and things and asparagus, trying to push through, was having a real hard job in actually getting through this matted seaweed. So I've got a few, as you can see over there, that are a bit wonky. So I've been in here and given it a good old pull up now, but they seem to love the seaweed because I get really good healthy asparagus in this bed, really do as a rule. Maybe they're quite strong from just having to push themselves up through the matted seaweed, but there you go. Right, let's get to the actual picking. So we want to, like I said, get them to about, I'm going to use that one over there actually, which is a bit bigger. We want them to be between 6 and 9 inches tall when you're going to pick them, and we snap them off. So as you can see, we've got little seams here every so often, and I like to snap them off, thumb there at the seam, just like that. That's a bit of a thing one, but there you go. Let's try another one. Like I said, look, this one's gone a bit wonky with the seaweed. Here we go. So we've got this one here. This is about 7 inches. So out there, and we just snap it off. Excuse the close up, but as you can see, the asparagus here, I cut that off a bit wonky, but what we want to do is make sure we're not all the way down in this sort of woody stuff here. We want a nice, this one here, I'd say I'd chop it about there. When I go inside, I'll just chop it off so that we haven't got the sort of more woody stem. We've got the nice green stem all the way up, and lots of juicy goodness and flavour in there. So let's have one more down here. So here's one more, as I can say, going down just above. Got my thumb in there and snap. There we go. So what I'll do is I'll bring these in, put them in, like I said, this one's a bit small, that one's about a good right size, but again I'll chop them off at the bottom here, just so we got the greenness rather than the woody bit at the bottom. Take these in, I'm going to put them in a bowl of water, cold water, then I'll give them a good wash, because any overwintering asparagus beetles or they'll often lay their eggs in the top part of the asparagus, so if you give them a good wash, that will wash any off. Okay, so let's have a look at my other bed, and I'll just show you some of the sort of things, maybe a couple of don'ts there, etc. Right, so asparagus grows surprisingly fast. So if you don't keep an eye on it, all of a sudden it will get quite big very quickly. This is getting on a bit on the big side, and you see what I say about it being a quite thin one. So it's obviously been competing with the strawberries that were in this bed and other things. I let a few weeds get in here because, excuse the construction behind me, this is going to be a brand new veg bed area, but yeah, it's a lot thinner. So I'm still going to cut this because Mrs. F actually likes them a bit thinner rather than the thick ones. So here's one here. This is still a good size. There you go, nice and easy. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 asparagus for our dinner tonight. Obviously we want to eat this nice and fresh, and there is nothing as delicious as a nice fresh bit of asparagus. It's night and day flavour compared to the stuff you get in the shops. Really juicy, beautiful flavour, and as you can see I've already had some. What did I do there? I just roasted that with a bit of olive oil and some herbs, salt and pepper, with a poached egg. Absolutely delicious. But there we go, nice and easy, all about asparagus. Really easy plant to grow, really. Just make sure it's not competing with other plants. Stick it in the ground, leave it for a couple of years, and then it will be a reliable vegetable for you, growing every single year. Just give it a mulch of a couple of inches of compost every spring, and that'll prevent the crowns being too exposed, and it will perform for you year after year, no problems. And I would definitely say job is a good one.